All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. You are here for Be an Interview Star using AI and the STAR method to shine. My name is Albert. I'm the founder of Albert's List. We're a job search, side hustle, and AI education organization helping you become the most resilient professional possible. And this webinar is co hosted in partnership with Callings.ai. With me also is Garrett Rice. We are here to talk about the STAR method today. And before we start, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on YouTube after today's webinar. So feel free to look out for those that recording coming through your email. We also encourage you to say hello in the webinar chat. Let us know where you're dialing in from. Share with us your LinkedIn profile. Share also what it is that you are looking for to do next. There are so many of us out of the job market right now, and so it's important for us to just be in community with one another as we figure this out and see what each other does. Because you know what, we have a ton of people here, and if we multiply that by 100 people per person, then we're clearly looking at almost 10,000 connections out here in the world today. We also have a poll on interview confidence because you just want to just gauge where you are in how you feel about your interviews. Are you the type who doesn't even know how to answer? Tell me about yourself. Are you okay at your interviews, or do you feel amazing and you're just here to become better at what you do? So that's just some things to consider. And yeah, we'll also have your questions being answered throughout today's webinar as well. So a little bit about me. My name is Albert. I'm a San Francisco Bay Area and raised job search entrepreneur. I'm also a product marketing manager at an AI and analytics company back east. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm also the founder of Albert's List. We're a community on Facebook here that has 50,800 members on Facebook. And we also host multiple webinars a week on a variety of topics, from the job search to how to do job search related work, all the way out to building your next side hustle with AI. Garrett, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. My name is Garrett Rice. I'm the co-founder of Callings.ai. We are the most comprehensive AI-powered job hunt platform available today. And we're here to support you all as you go through the adventure that is the modern job hunt.
Awesome, wonderful. And we partner up with Callings.ai, and they do so much really great work in helping you keep track of your job search, which only seems to become more and more complicated and seemingly more nuanced every single day. And so, you all know this, right? Because as we go through this job market, it is clear that the job market is a tough one to be in. There's a lot of downward pressure, and we can talk about everything from inflation to AI to more picky companies, to even more of the fact that a lot of companies are laying off because they've now decided to go all in on investing in AI infrastructure, only to realize that they need to pull it back because AI is not the silver bullet that they all thought it was going to be. But nonetheless, as a job seeker, your experience has become a lot more competitive. It's become a lot more high volume, right? We're averaging 250 applications per job posting these days, and 400 plus for entry level roles, just given where things have gone. And out of those, 4 to 6 candidates are typically invited to interview for that pool, and only one gets the offer. And so, today we're going to talk about what it means to be in that interview process. Because if you are able to get that coveted interview, you are beating nearly 5 in 250 odds. And I guess if I bring that all the way down, you're pretty much the top 2.5%. And so by the time you've been into that room, you are already beating the odds of what it means to be in that interview. And so how you and what you do next is what decide it is going to decide what ends up happening. Do you move into the next part of the interview process? Do you get to do homework or give a presentation? Do you get to talk to more members of your prospective team? And how you do that is going to be incredibly important. And we all know, right, that interviews are taking longer and trust is harder to create these days. We all remember, maybe perhaps if you are of a certain age, I'm in my late 30s now, almost into my early 40s, when all you had to do was walk in, maybe talk to two people, get up, provide a handshake, and then move into the next round of that interview. Or you would get that offer, actually, rather, at that point. And what has happened now is that the interview process has become multi step. You speak to a recruiter, then you speak to the hiring manager, then you speak to a peer, then you maybe do a homework assignment, and then you speak to an executive. And then if they're maybe still not done with that yet, you go back and you speak to another person on the team, and then maybe you speak to the hiring manager again, and then you speak to the recruiter. And by then, you're now at, about 8 steps into this process. And if that just annoys you and that frustrates you, type yes in the webinar chat. I want to hear how much maybe you're experiencing that in this interview process right now. Right. And so there's a few of you who are saying yes. And so, the stats really say it, right? Like there are now 40% more interviews per hire than we had now in 2021 during that great resignation period. And that time to hire is now somewhere between 36 to 68 days. So if you are starting an interview process this afternoon, maybe after this call, that's going to take you somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks to get to the very end because they've got interviews with other people. They've got people who are out on vacation now that it's the summer. And I'm even reading that, maybe these interviews are going to take longer because we're in the middle of World Cup soccer, right? And so productivity's taken a hit. And not only that, there are also more homework assessments that are being given out, more stakeholders, because they really want to make sure that the person who is interviewing is as risk free as possible and brings the most excitement to bring in that person because a lot of companies are borrowing money to make these hires happen because they realize they need to grow and interest rates are high and all of that so forth. But even more so, the trust dynamic has also been lost, right? We've seen employment fraud come through. Just a few months ago, I saw this story about how rogue North Koreans have made their way into IT interviews. And so you're having people who are saying, okay, we need to take these interviews back in person. And so the interview game has become really fickle. And it's become really tough. And if you're getting that one interview a week, one interview every other week, you're doing really, really well. And if you're running into that wall of interviewing, then you know what? It's okay too. And so you're going to get that interview, and it's important that you make the most of it. And as we always like to say, it comes down to storytelling. How do you tell the best story possible that showcases that you are the best candidate, who is the most qualified and the most memorable? And so, why is telling stories really important? Your resume is a series of bullet points. You did A, which led to B, which resulted in C. For example, right? I wrote 15 blog posts that led to 500 views, which resulted in one person reaching out to learn more about the product. That's a resume thing. And what hiring managers are wanting to talk to you about is they want to know the things that truly make you special and truly make you different, right? Bullet points are merely claims that they want to understand, okay, you might have done that work, but I want to understand how you did that work. What are the moments that made that work possible and make you potentially different from maybe the other person who's written 15 blog posts and got some number of page views that led to a number of leads? And they want to see, like, okay, are you somebody who thinks out of the box? Or maybe you're just full on lucky, right? And so you want to be able to showcase that you can do the work and do it really well, and then also be memorable enough that you leave people thinking, okay, that was a really, really, really great candidate. And that's what matters. And so, what else is it, right? When you're giving your behavioral answers and when you're interviewing, a lot of people also come into interviews without that level of structure. Somebody asks you, tell me about yourself. And there's a few of you here who have said, I don't even know how to answer the question, tell me about yourself. And this is for 28% of you here in the room. Somebody tells you, hey, it's great to meet you, Albert. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself just to warm up in the interview? And suddenly you're telling them and you're oversharing and you're giving them your entire life story. My name is Albert. I was born in Los Gatos, California, to immigrant parents who both worked in tech. And as a young child, I was really into reading picture books, and this led to this and this led to that. And before you know it, you're 5 minutes in and the person's looking at you like, are we on a first date or are we doing an interview? Right. And so those are things that common mistakes are made. Or maybe you don't give measurable results. I did a thing and it was really cool that I did it, and there wasn't much else beyond that, and that was cool. Or you make it sound like you're pre-scripted. In this case, maybe you went on to ChatGPT and you said, "Hey, I'm interviewing for this job at Cisco tomorrow or at Apple, and I want you to take this job description and parse it into interview answers based upon my resume," which a lot of us are doing now. And you know what? You should probably do it to some effect, but you have taken it and you've memorized it because maybe you're anxious and you're nervous and you want to sound really good. And then you say, well, at my last job, I went ahead and did this thing, and this thing. And what it did was it allowed me to do this, and that, right? And it sounds incredibly generic. It doesn't sound interesting. You're not inflecting your voice. You're not sounding like it's telling someone a story about something that was really fascinating about this job. And, like in the way that I'm presenting sort of this webinar right now, I could always say common mistakes and behavioral answers sound like this. And the thing that you should not do is rambling without structure, oversharing, no measurable result, or sounding pre-scripted. And if I went that way, right, you would get really, really, really bored super quickly. Right? Yes, if you think that's what would happen in the webinar chat. Right? No, if you feel otherwise. Maybe some of you here are just here for information. And you know what? More power to you too. But I'm also here to tell you a story of how the interview process has completely changed and what you need to do differently so that when you do get into that interview process, you sound interesting, because interesting people are interesting to others, right? And so you want to make sure that, especially in an interview, which is actually not just storytelling, but also strategic storytelling, that you're telling people what they need to know, and you're also being really powerful with what that means. And what that really comes down to is this, right? Albert's list, when we talk about interviewings, our core philosophy is that an interview is going to be two things that you've come in to do. Number one is that you are coming in to mitigate risk. And we like to call this avenues of concern, right? Companies are never going to hire anybody just because they want to hire somebody. They don't feel sorry for you. They don't feel like they are going to just pick somebody out of a hat and say, yeah, you know what? There's five of you here. We'll hire all five of you. It's all cool. We'll have you start tomorrow and it's going to be great. And what they really want to do during the interview process is they want to make sure that you say that you are everything that you say you are. And during that interview process, during the STAR method, when you're giving that, your job is to close the doubts before they are spoken out loud. And what does that mean? Is that you give an answer. How did you do A? Well, I did this and I did that. And the STAR method, as you'll learn soon, is meant to close any of those doubts and hopefully reduce the number of follow-up questions, right? So you may be asked a question like, tell me about a time when you had a conflict with another person. And that's a STAR question that mitigates risk. And if you say, oh, well, me and Emma were at my last job, and Emma and I got into a conflict because we disagreed on something. We had a yelling match in the hallway, and that was that. And that creates avenues of concern, because somebody's going to say, "Well, why were you yelling at Emma? What was going on there, and why didn't you resolve it?" And they're going to keep digging deeper, and maybe they discover that you had beef with Emma because Emma ate your lunch out of the fridge one day, and that's going to maybe present the fact that maybe you don't get along well with other people, you don't play well, and they don't end up hiring you because of that. Which is what leads to number two, because the STAR method is also an opportunity for you to create what I like to call avenues of excitement, right? And so this is kind of like that moment, like maybe you've been on a date or maybe you've met a new friend and you're vibing, right? And that's a very Gen Z, Gen Alpha term, but you're vibing and things are going really well and you feel a connection, you feel that level of chemistry. And that's when things feel really good, where it's like you're excited about this person, you're excited about this opportunity. And maybe instead of saying, oh, Emma and I had a major disagreement at work, and it evolved into a very strong disagreement. You don't need to say shouting match, where she believed A and I believed B. And in the fact that she believed in A and I believed in B, I sought to look for commonalities between the both of us. Her disagreement lied in this area, and my disagreement lied in that area. And we were able to find a common ground that benefited the company in the end. And together we moved forward on this disagreement, and we were able to help the business achieve this level of success. And now the person's thinking, okay, maybe Albert, you did get into a conflict, and conflicts are natural at work. But not only did you resolve that conflict, but wow, you found common ground that found a way to help the business out at the very end. And that's avenues of excitement. And so as we look through the meaning and the way of star questions today, I want all of you to think about what that means, right? Like as you answer your questions in the past and as you answer your questions in the present, what are you going to do differently to make sure that you reduce your avenues of concern while increasing your avenues of excitement, right? Um, yeah. So, right. Well, Harry, the metrics I wanted to give was we were able to find that common ground, which eventually led to a positive business result, like increasing revenue or something or some forth at the end. So that that way, and you're able to, I would say, resolve the problem and then also create some excitement on your communication skills. I think those are the results that folks would be looking for. And so, why is STAR the delivery mechanism for what we do? Number one, right? It prevents risk. It's a tight structure. It keeps you in a, I would say, bubble. And bubble is the right word to use here because it prevents you from rambling into places that are going to invite those follow-up questions. Um, you say what is meant to be said, and of course you say it strategically. If you got into an argument with someone, you can just say, I got into a disagreement, keep it politically correct. What it does is it proves competence. It gives you that result of those answers, which you just mentioned, Harry. That is one part of the story that you can't get rid of because business is all about results. It's the end result, it's the evidence of what ended up happening. And it's something that you can repeat under pressure, right? So you know that as you give your answers within the interview, you can say, okay, I just said this situation. This is the tasks that I undertook. Here are the actions that came out of that. And then here are the results, right? And so you can keep yourself to that model. And that is really, really going to help you because it keeps you in that realm. And so we're going to talk today about mastering that STAR method exactly as it is. Okay. All right. So, okay, well, maybe it is, Harry. I'm just giving an example. I think you understand what the STAR method is. We can get super technical. I just wanted to build something that everyone could agree with. And I think you probably are an amazing interviewer, and I think you can understand where the example could apply. I could probably go into product marketing and something like that, but I don't want to bore people. Okay, so what does STAR stand for at the end of the day, right? So the S in STAR stands for situation. And so in this situation, what you're talking about is all the things that you know about when it comes to talking about a story. The who, the what, the where, the why, the when, and the how. And most importantly, what was at stake, right? Where does it land with you? Um, uh, Thank you, Harry. To talk about what's at stake between you, the company, the people you're working with, your peers, possible customers, possible internal customers, and other stakeholders. And so this is generally a 1 to 2 sentence section, right? Enough to make the context of the story understandable, but you're also not giving a full backstory. So, what you really want to do here is you want to give them enough to understand and whet their appetite to understand that in this particular situation, you had one thing to start with, and then you're going to move into something a little bit deeper. The next thing we're going to talk about in the T is the task. What were you specifically responsible for? This is where you talk about what it is that your role in the company was. So, for example, uh, I guess we'll start with S and maybe we'll do something that is related to product marketing, right? So, I was responsible for launch. There was a product that we wanted to launch, a widget that we wanted to put in the market into a customer base that was particularly tough. That's a situation. Task. What was I specifically responsible for? Clarifying my role. I was responsible for the launch, including creating sales enablement material to help sales out, writing content such as blog posts on the websites, as well as keeping everybody on task with the weekly meetings. Then we move into A. A is the action, right? The steps you actually took. So I was responsible for these things, but then here's what I made sure to execute upon to make sure that these things could work. So in putting together my solution briefs and my websites and my sales enablement sheets, I knew that the market that I was going into was a really tough market. And so not only did I do research, but I also spoke to people on the sales staff to understand what it was best to engage this existing customer persona that we like to talk to, or the type of customer that we want to go to. So you're using I here, you're not using we because this is what you're responsible for. And what they want to do is they want to isolate the power that you have as an individual while doing this kind of work. So this is what I did. And then as a result, what happened is I was able to interview these salespeople and that I was able to create compelling sales plays to that would support these salespeople as they went to market. And as a result, what happened is we were able to gain our first customer within 10 days of the product launching. And this customer helped us increase revenue by X millions of numbers of dollars and helped us really refine what it is that we were selling so that other products could be done. And so that could be a result. Other results that you could look at, it could be what you learned or what could change as a result happened, or something that, as I was saying earlier, perhaps, multiple results down the line. All right. So we do have somebody saying here that STA should be 20%, which is the situation, task, and action, and the R should be 80%, right? And the results are the ones that do leave impressions with people, show that you're capable of saying what you say you'll do, and so forth from there. And so you might have heard of star methods in, different ways and spades, right? There's the star method, there's a SAR method, or the CAR method. And really, with all of these, they address the very same thing, which is providing context, telling a story, and then sharing the result. And what's common with all of these at the end is pretty much that, right? It's the situation, it's the action and the context, and then it's what ended up happening. And so at the end of the day, adapting one of those into your framework for how you sound so you can tell a clear and concise story where you don't ramble is going to be beneficial for you at the end. And so this is an example of a strong star answer, right? When it comes to it, you can, swap in your own story for whatever it may be, because every company wants to know that what you do or what you did, your past performance, is going to be an indicator of your future success, right? And I like to say this in presentations as well, where your financial advisor can't promise that to you, in the sense that what happened in the past and them helping you get the gains that you did is not something that can happen in the future. But employers are banking on it to ensure that you can help them build more success based on your past successes. So you can apply STAR here really in any way possible, whether it's somebody asking you, tell me about a time where you failed, tell me about a time where you were successful, tell me about a time where you did X. And right on the job description, where they're going to have your job duties, they're going to want to know whether you've done that X within that bullet before, and your STAR answer is going to help you get there. But not only that, right? So we are now in the AI era. Many of you have access to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, etc. In the era now of AI, you can now accelerate how you prepare for your interviews by turning your experiences into stories and having AI help you along the way. I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed in doing what I've done through, like, ChatGPT and so forth, is allowing ChatGPT and these LLMs to surface capabilities and results and stories that I may have otherwise forgotten or not even thought about, right? And that's what AI is really good for, is helping you surface those achievements, interviewing you to understand what really happened, spotting any gaps that you may have had, and maybe even adding bullet points that can help you prepare you for your job search. And even more so, if you have an interview lined up, copying your resume along with your copying your resume along with the job description into one singular chat can help you uncover where it is that makes you a really strong fit, or maybe you're not even a great fit for a particular role. And so I encourage you to do that if you haven't done that yet. Um, what it's not for is writing your final answer word for word and reciting that in an interview. It can help you understand those answers and it can help you tell the beginnings of that story. But if you rely on it for the entire story, then it's no longer you that it sounds like. It sounds like ChatGPT and so forth. So AI will find the material, you end up building the story, and then you say it in your own words. And so when I did mention this, right? If you open a ChatGPT right now, what you can do is you can paste in your resume, ask the AI to identify interview relevant achievements. And if you match it up with a job description, it'll get even more specific and granular that way, as we see in step number 2. And what you can also do is you can also let the AI interview you along the way. One of my favorite things to do is that you can let the AI interview you and say, interview me one question at a time, as a hiring manager would about this particular job. Or interview me one question at a time and tell me what gaps I might have missed along the way, right? To surface stories, build out answers, flag things that may not come through. And then if you're doing it as to interview as if AI were the hiring manager, using it to answer those questions and provide the story that it hypothetically thinks that it would be looking for. Now, right, because AI is very logical, it may end up telling you exactly what it needs, one for one. But, later on, what we really need to consider is the fact that you might get something out of left field from the manager, and that's something at the end of the day that you really can't account for, and outside of this. So right, when you're talking to an interviewer, when you're talking to AI as the interviewer, have it say, or you should type in, interview me for this question. You interview me for this role using my resume. Ask one behavioral question at a time, then tell me what is missing from my answer, or give me feedback for my answer and tell me what from my resume I can use to make it even better. Okay. So this is what it looks like in practice, right? Tell me about a time when you manage conflicting priorities. Um, what is it you're going to say, and ChatGPT or the AI is going to notice what you might want it to say, and then have it repurposed back out into a star answer that is strong. And then when you get that answer, you're going to write that answer out, use it in the outline, write it out fully, and then continue getting feedback from that. So, how to talk about your AI experience in the STAR method as well. That's also something to consider as we go through this. AI, employers also increasingly care about AI fluency. And so using AI along the way to build your job search out and show proof through projects is also what matters, right? And so if you've been unemployed for a while and you're looking for a project to help you prove that you are good in what it is that you do and be ready for the future AI world, this is also really good for the STAR method because it shows that you can build those projects on your own and apply it into a corporate setting. And what it really does is, number one, it signals adaptability. Employers see that you're willing to adopt new tools, or how you're going to handle the next technology shift whenever it happens. It's also now a productivity expectation, right? A lot of companies have laid off a lot of people. And so they're going to ask you in your interviews, how are you using generative AI today? What are things that you're doing? And so they want to know how you use AI as a human in the loop, AI assisted workflow. And so that can also go into your STAR method piece as well. And then it's also something that you screen for. So if you oversell or undersell AI within your resume, then you might be writing resumes that get noticed by AI and then automatically get you rejected. And so, similarly in the STAR method, right? You want to talk about how you want to avoid talking about that AI wasn't involved at all, or that you use AI a lot, or that you use over rehearsed language. But what you do want to do is you want to name specific tools, talk about AI and its specific impacts, and whether it saves you time, whether it saves you money, or both, and then you want to share that outcome, right? So that's similarly the STAR method that matters there as well. And so you want to treat your AI adaptability and as something that's in addition to the positive and or the negative responses, that questions that you're doing a response to, right? An AI adoption story or an AI execution story still needs the situation, task, action, and the result. And so that piece in there is you still want to have in there that subject matter, because that is the key, right? So, for example, I noticed our team was manually tagging support tickets. I piloted an AI assisted workflow for the first class using something like Claude and tuned it over a couple of weeks and then cut manual triage time by roughly a third. And so this is what companies are looking for these days when it comes to AI, because they want to see that even if AI doesn't end up replacing your job, they want it to see as somebody who can be an operator with AI so that you can be even more efficient and, I guess in some sense, do more work with less. And so, with that, I invite you to leverage the STAR method to continue to build your story. Join Albert's List. We've got our Facebook group that I shared up earlier. We've got other webinars coming up as well. We've got coaches, and you can get advice on how to refine your STAR method. And then you can also try Callings.ai, which I'm going to go ahead and go over to here. If you want to try Callings.ai, you can go to Callings.ai/Albert. And you can also get a demo from Garrett. So, Garrett, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you if you are over there.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. That is fantastic. And I think just a wonderful overview of a great way to think about interviewing. Um, there have been some questions in the Q&A that I thought maybe before I jump in, one person, Sarah, mentioned that she's having a lot of interviews. She uses the STAR method and gets a lot of follow-up questions on
Mm-hmm.
her responses, and has not yet gotten to the final round. My take on that was that the follow-up questions are pretty normal and
Yeah.
to be expected. The job of an interviewer is to press on you and see if they can get you to respond. And that, at least from my personal perspective, getting the final round or getting the final job at some level is a statistical thing
Mm-hmm.
because you're competing against other people who are also highly qualified. But if you get into the interview and you're talking with them, they've already seen you and seen your value proposition, and so you should take that as a partial win. But Albert, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
And I think sometimes it depends on the follow-up question. Sometimes the follow-up question is because they want to pull the excitement factor out of you. And other times they're trying to figure out whether you're as risky as maybe they heard you the first time around. So if you start digging yourself holes in those star follow-up questions, then it puts you in a really tough place, because then you might have to be forced to be willing to admit more truth than you were willing to admit initially. And so what you need to do is you need to keep it, I would say, as risk-free as possible there, to make sure that anything that you might say doesn't get, overblown into something that may be too big. It also may be because you weren't very specific in your efforts to be unspecific. So you want to know what exactly they're looking for, and that you answer their question exactly as it is. So, Anna, the excitement factor is, so in my presentation, I talk about how when it comes to a job interview, the role of the interview is to reduce the risk that you bring to the table as a candidate. And then it's to also increase the excitement that you have as a candidate as well. And to focus on the positive aspects of your candidacy that get people even more interested in your skills and want to move forward with you, right? So it's finding the points of connectivity and chemistry between you and the work that you do that gets folks to want to talk to you more and move you on to the next round. Yes, Sindhu. Yes.
Thank you,
The whole
Albert.
point is to sound natural and conversational.
Yep. And Anna asks in the chat, what's the excitement factor? And I think a lot of that is your own personal passion.
Hmm.
Makes you
Outside of your
interested.
passion for survival and getting a paycheck, your passion for the job.
Fair.
Yeah.
Well, with that, what I want to do is talk a little bit about some tools that we can make available to you. And everybody on this webinar has access for the next 30 days to all the premium features of Callings.ai. And we have a number of tools that will help you as you go about interviewing and help you reveal things about the STAR method. And so I'm going to show you those. There's three main things that the Callings platform provides. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we are the most comprehensive and robust AI platform available for job seeking on the market. There's three things that we're focused on providing you. Number one is we want to help you uh, discover and articulate and promote your personal brand, which is really your story and your authentic value proposition. And we want to help you do that. And so we have tools to do that. The second thing that we do is we find you opportunities. So that could be the 13 million jobs a day on our platform that we have that we match you with using AI so that you don't need to type Boolean commands. We actually find jobs that you're qualified for and bring them to you so that you can pursue those jobs. We also provide tools in the opportunity area to help you pursue jobs that aren't listed using the quote unquote um, hidden job market. So we help you network to people that might be hiring or find ways to talk to people inside of companies you want to work at. So there's tools on the platform for that as well. So the third thing that we provide specifically is a ton of networking tools. So we help you for every job on your tracker on our platform that you have, we will find up to 7 to 8 people that are related to that job at that company that you can reach out to. And we will help you draft the outreach message and find their email address so you can send them a direct message. And so that is, we believe, the three main things you need to do in your job hunt to be successful is you need to articulate your personal brand and your personal value proposition, which is all about what Albert's talking about using the STAR method. Find opportunities and pursue them and put yourself out there a lot to get as many opportunities on your plate as possible. And third, as we all know, 70 to 80% of successful job hunts include networking. You have to reach out to real human beings so that they can help you. So that's the core of callings. And I'm going to show you things today really around tools that we provide that will help you as you're developing your star stories and help you prepare for interviewing. So with that, I'll share the screen. This is Callings. If you click on the home button, we'll show you sort of a quick jumping off point to different aspects. So this is all about you working on your resume, working on your personal brand elements. This is all about finding and pursuing opportunities. This is all about networking, and this is all about how to promote yourself, and we have tools for that as well. So when you're working on interviews in the STAR story, one of the first things that's going to be helpful to you is for you to understand yourself really well. Because, like an actor, you have not trained yourself on this play yet, which is to talk about yourself and market yourself into a job. So, we help you begin that process by reading your resume when you sign up with us or your LinkedIn profile, and we build a series of reports for you called My Insights, which help you understand what you want out of this whole job hunt situation better and how to market yourself to it. So we'll create these reports without you doing anything. But then we also create this top end goals questionnaire. And if you take the time to answer these 21 multiple choice questions, then we know a ton more about you. By the way, all your data on our platform is secure, is not shared to anyone outside of our platform, and we do not train models on your data. So when you tell us stuff about you, only you benefit from that. We're not selling that data. So here are some of the things that we help develop for you when you first onboard. Number one, we read your resume, we read the answers to your responses, and we tell you based on what you're saying about yourself, what your goals are in your job hunt. And so, for example, with my demo resume here, the most important two things are the roles and the industries that I'm working in. This may be totally different for you. Perhaps quality of life is important to you, or the team that you're working with. And so we help you suss that out because that's often a part of the questioning process for interviews. The second thing we do is we evaluate you in the marketplace. We show you where you've been in the market. We'll show you what parts of the marketplace are valuing your skill set and are hiring. We'll even identify companies for you that are hiring. The third thing we'll do is we'll craft an ideal job description, and this will help you think about yourself in your next role. And so, based on your responses and your resume, we will craft this. And many of our users tell us that this is we've nailed it, and that this helps them think about what types of jobs they want to pursue. If you don't nail it, or if we don't nail it for you, it probably means that your resume and the responses you're giving are not in alignment with your true beliefs about where you want to go. And so this is all a tool process where you can make changes and update it till it fits you perfectly. The final thing we generate for you is brand elements. And this is all about you telling your story. So it's not easy for you to talk about yourself. I think you all know that. And so I'm going to click in on this so you can look at this full report. We give you a 20-second elevator pitch. This is that question that people ask you at a party. Well, what are you looking for? What are you trying to do? Who are you? We give you a longer 2-minute pitch, a professional summary in case you want to update your resume or your LinkedIn profile. We help craft one phrase professional headlines that describe you. We describe what makes you unique. And these are the starting point for you in an interview process, because these are the things that you can pull out and start crafting stories around, because these are things that really stand out to our AI about you from your resume and the responses you've given us. And oftentimes these are the core things you can respond to during an interview. So, for example, blend of deep technical expertise and creative storytelling, or proven ability to drive growth by bridging businesses. And these will be different and custom for you. We call out your top 10 skills, which oftentimes lead to important discussion points in an interview. And then we call out the things that we recognize from your resume and your background, which are your top 10 achievements. This is the results section of your star story. So the situation is oftentimes where you were or where you worked. The task is oftentimes the type of jobs that you had or the skills that you've had. And so use this section, and what we've heard from our users is they use this section as a way of training themselves how to naturally talk about themselves. They print it out, they go through it, they practice, and it allows them to respond authentically in their own language about the skills and backgrounds that they have. And so think of this as your cheat sheet to start building those star stories. And I encourage you to dig in on all of these things, because these really help you to ground yourself on where you are and where you're going. So that is my insights. And that is generated automatically when you sign up. The next thing that I want to point out to you is that we track all your job hunting in one place, so you don't have to build a spreadsheet inside of Callings. And you can either use our job database of 13 million jobs to find opportunities. We also have a plugin that allows you to save jobs from LinkedIn and Indeed into your Callings tracker, or you can add jobs manually. So we are job agnostic. We want you to find every opportunity that you can to pursue. You can also create what are called speculative jobs and add them to your tracker. And these are jobs where there's no open job post, but it's a job you want. And so that might be a company that you've always died to work for. And that will allow you to use some of the tools I'm about to show you. In each job in your tracker, we tell you about the job and the job post as it was posted. We provide you a job fit report, and I'll find one that's already been generated here, where you can see how you match against this job and where you're strong and where you might be weak. By the way, we also highlight in green the things in the job post that you've nailed, the things in yellow that you partially nail, and the things in red where you may need to defend. And this goes back to the risk thing that Albert was talking about. But we also tell you and provide a full match report against the job and tell you everything there is to know about the company. We pull out the latest news about the company, give you their Glassdoor rating. That's all in this Evaluate tab. We help you generate resumes and cover letters that are custom for this role. You have the final say on what goes into these things, but we at least do a first draft for you so you can work off of it. And we also show you every change we made so you know exactly what's going on. And then this is where things start to get interesting. After you've applied, we will call out the 5 to 7 people at this company. In this case, this is Autodesk. The 5 to 7 people at this company that are connected specifically to this role that might be a person for you to reach out to. We'll tell you everything about them, what your strategy should be to talk with them. And this is all the networking stuff. And then when you're ready, if you click the reach out button, we will draft an outreach message to this person. It's all customizable. You can either prompt it or type it and make edits naturally or custom or manually. And then when you're ready, if you click on this open draft email button, we will actually go and find this person's email address. So instead of trying to go through InMail, which oftentimes people ignore when they're hiring, you can send them an email directly to his inbox. And so this is an important part of the networking process inside of Callings. We also have a number of other networking tools, which I probably won't get to much today, but the goal is to get you connected with real human beings. Because if a real human being advocates you for a job, then your odds of getting the interview are very high. And then and they also help with the risk issue because if somebody is advocating for you for a job, then everybody else in the company is going to trust that you're less risky than somebody that they don't know. Um, so the final thing I want to show out here is for every single role in your tracker, we generate a custom interview prep report. And this will help you prepare for this job. So this includes things like an overview, including a pep talk, potential pitfalls of your candidacy, and there is no job that you apply to where there isn't things you need to protect against. That's just the nature of the business. So calling those out allows you to build strategies for defending parts of your candidacy that they might have questions about. The next thing we provide is a list of the likely interviewers, and this is just statistically based on every, hundreds of thousands of interviews, the path that you're going to go through in the interview. So for this one, you're likely to see a recruiter, an HR manager, the VP of Worldwide Marketing, head of paid media, marketing and marketing analytics director. And so what we do there is focus on what do these people want out of the interview from you and what expectations do they have coming out of it if you were the successful candidate. So this helps you prepare. So when you talk to different people in your journey, if you hit on the types of people that we've called out, then you'll be better prepared for what they're really trying to get from you in the interview. And this also allows you to steer the types of stories you tell them so that you can nail their expectations. We provide interview topics and how to prepare for them. And this is where we get to the meat of preparing the answers and the star stories that you want to have. And this is based on the job description in the company and the industry. And so you'll see the types of questions they're likely to hit on so that you can prepare a star story for each one of them. We have interview questions that are likely to ask and the answers that we propose, behavioral questions and answers. And these are all in the STAR method. So we take a stab at it for you. Highly encourage you to use this as a informational and training document, not to be repeated directly. You've got to put these things into your own words, but at least you have material here to help you in that process of practicing. You can take this, print it out, get a friend or a family member to help you practice your interview, and then just have them go through these things and really test you on the questions. You can even look here and we'll try and draft a few questions for you to think about asking them. Remember, we had an interview in a webinar last month with Lou Adler, which I encourage you to look at. He had a ton of really great feedback about interviewing. And one of the things that he pointed out is you got to take control of the interview. You've got to ask questions. You've got to be proactive in the interview. And so we helped draft a few things that are obvious questions you can bring up as part of this job description. And then we also call out other resources for you to prepare. So in no way do we at Callings think that we have the end all be all answer. Our goal is to give you more information and help train you. So somebody's asking on in the Q&A, what is our placement employment success rate? An active Callings user has up to a 42% better chance of landing a job. than somebody who is not using Callings. That's the research that we've done. And we've compared a standard case of job seekers just by looking at people with open to work on LinkedIn versus people who are using our platform actively. So, so these are tools that you can use to prepare yourself to go through what Albert suggested. You can copy these in, put them into ChatGPT to further explore these and come up with your stories, and then practice them. Have them in your head so that they roll off the tongue for you and in your own parlance with your own sense of humor and your own personality. And that's where that sizzle comes from, that excitement comes from that Albert was talking about. You're the excitement. You're the candidate that they're hoping for. And so by being able to respond with interview questions with the STAR method, telling your story is going to get them excited because you have that background. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten into the interview round. And this is kind of what I was suggesting to Sarah when she asked the question about not getting in. If they're interviewing you, they already like you. They've already selected you from 250 or more applicants and picked you out of that jar because you were appealing to them. So remember that when you go in, and don't be hard on yourself. They're on that date because they're thinking you might be the person to marry. So I would throw that out there as well. A few other things about callings. In the modern job market, it is not enough to just apply for jobs. You need to put yourself out there and be a valuable commodity. And one way we help you do that is we help you generate what we call a calling card, which is basically a simple online brochure of you. We create a really powerful graphic so that in the average hiring manager or recruiter only spends 5 to 7 seconds considering you. With this, in 5 to 7 seconds, looking at this graphic, this infographic, they'll be able to look at you and see all the amazing things you've done at a glance. They can deep dive into your background, into your resume, what you're looking for, et cetera. And this is all customizable. So you can go in and create a calling card. And then once you've created your calling card, you can send it out to your own supporters. So we interviewed friends of job seekers, and what they told us is, I would love to help them, but I have to even ask them for a resume. In this case, you give them your entire marketing campaign so they don't need to guess what you're looking for. And we help you send an outreach message that we help craft to all of your existing connections so that they can start promoting you into the job market. You can even promote it on social media. And we've had some of our users get thousands of views just by promoting their calling card on LinkedIn. So we have tools for helping you build a campaign and promote yourself. We have tools for helping you become a thought leader and create posts and generate content. So this helps them when they look you up on LinkedIn, see that you're a thought leader in your area of expertise. If you're a product manager, you should be posting thought leadership about product management. And so all those tools are in the platform. We have an entire set of tools for finding events in your area to network at, for finding recruiters that you can get to go out and sell you into the job market, associations, community support, and more. So that's all built into the platform. And so there's much, much more here. And we host other events where we go through full trainings of callings. But the key thing I wanted to focus on today is what Albert talked about, which is interviews. And so take a look at these tools as a way of taking the content that you already have and really helping you boil that down to the star stories that help you make you successful. And you can try all of the tools we showed you here today for free. All you have to do is register for a new account at Callings.ai, Callings.ai/Albert. And if you go there, we'll give you 30 days for free, and you can try it out. And whether you use our platform or not, I highly encourage you to use AI as an adjunct to help you prepare yourself for these interviews and build the stories that will help tell your best story. So with that, I will stop talking and I can turn it over to any questions or comments that Albert might have.
All right. I am back.
He's back. By the way, somebody asked whether Callings.ai is relevant in Melbourne. We have our job inventory is global, so you can check it out and let us know. But we should have pretty good coverage of the major cities in Australia.
What is Callings.ai's placement or employment success rate? How many customers have secured interviews from their targeted companies and outreach efforts through Callings AI? Wow, putting your
Yeah.
feet to the fire.
Yeah, so I tried to answer that. We actually ran a research report on the average job hunt versus people using our platform, and the statistics were that people who use our platform as intended are up to 49% more likely to land a job than if they did not.
Hmm. Okay.
Let's see. Just going through any questions.
Yep.
Are we going to get a promotional code? Callings.ai/Albert. And that'll give you 30 days of premium access. By the way, I'll mention that your data is always yours, and finding jobs, applying to jobs, and uh, 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 and keeping your jobs and tracking your jobs are always free on our platform. So we never hold your data hostage. Any other questions about interviewing, the STAR method?
Yeah. Still have 100 people here. It's great.
Yeah. Thank you all for staying.
So Catherine, the recording will be available to you. I'm gonna hop on hop on YouTube after this and just upload it directly. So once Garrett gets it, you'll get it. Can you showcase any
Yeah.
real examples of who uses calling AI and got the job?
Yeah, if you go to our LinkedIn page, which is Calling AI on LinkedIn, we've actually posted examples of people who've used calling to get a job.
Excellent.
Is this platform relevant for non-tech jobs? Yes. So our job inventory is across the spectrum. I think we pull jobs from 2 to 3 million individual companies across the globe. And one of our goals on the platform was to get away from job advertising because a lot of those jobs continue to be advertised even though the job is filled. And so, as much as possible, we pull jobs directly from hiring company sites. And those hiring company sites are across virtually every industry in most geographies. Thank you, Sergio. Ton in biotech and pharma. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, you will get access to the slide deck. I'm gonna go ahead and put that on SlideShare, so we'll link to that. How does it help for networking? Callings.ai.
Oh, so as I mentioned in the demo, we for every job in your tracker that you're pursuing, we'll try and find between seven or well, five to 8 or 9 people per company that are related not just to the company, but to the job you're applying to, so that you can reach out to people that are connected to that role at the company. And so that's targeted networking. We help identify recruiters in your industry that are recruiting people like you so that you can network to them. We help you find local events and birds of a feather groups for your area of expertise so that you can sign up and do what's called serendipitous network or reaching out and just talking to other people in the field. Um, and we have many more features coming on that because we know reaching out to people is the most important thing.
Is Callings for consulting?
We do have contract roles and part-time roles listed. Of course, a lot of people go to things like Upwork for consulting work. But if a company is advertising to hire somebody on a non-permanent basis as a contractor, then we'll have that role.
Awesome. Does Calling the AI have the date with the job was which the job was posted?
Yes. And in fact, for the jobs in our inventory, as much as possible, we will actually notify you in the tracker, for example, if the job has been pulled or withdrawn, so you know that the job is no longer active. And we think that's a relatively new, unique feature. And then, yes, you can sort by when you added it to the tracker. You can sort by when the job was posted. So you
Hmm.
have a sense of the aging of a job.
Can I see where can I see a slower demo on Callings.ai/Albert?
There, so if you go to Callings and sign in, there's a section called coaching, which has all of our webinars. And there's a webinar that we did in March called Using AI in Your Job Search, which covers the entire platform. We also have a weekly live session with our users called a calling circle, and you can join that. And we oftentimes will go through and answer any questions people have, but it's also all about best practice in job hunting. So it's not just an advertisement for callings, it's about networking with other job seekers and getting their best practices. So we do that every Monday at noon, and you're welcome to join that.
Love it. Will it keep it in your tracker so you will it I guess will Callings AI keep your something about the
I
job
think
description for
I think
you?
Sarah's asking whether or not if you add a job to callings in the tracker, then it will stay there until you delete it. And then for every job on your tracker, even speculative ones, we will actually generate an interview report to try and help you get started on those star stories.
Okay. Just wondering, does the training material take into account the different approaches or cultural norms in each country or areas of work?
We're probably more US and Europe focused on this webinar. Do you agree, Albert?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we're
Uh,
specialized. I know that interviewing and resumes and a lot of other aspects of the job hunt um, differ across cultural regions, and so
but I
we
think that
probably
probably results are the very, I think, are the universal thing that every employer is looking for. So I would think so.
yep. And I
Uh,
encourage you to watch the webinar we did with Lou Adler too. I think he had some other great feedback on the interviewing process that would be a great adjunct to what Albert said here today.
yeah. Let's see. Let's do two more questions here. Do you have any data regarding how networking with relevant people in a certain organization is helping with the referral? In case those are strangers or not someone who can vouch for you, why would networking help in such instances? Well, I would say that networking helps because it builds trust, and people end up hiring and working with those that they know, like, and trust. And so, if you can build any of those elements, then you are going to be in a good place. So, yeah,
Yeah, I love that. And I'll just add that systems and processes, hiring processes don't hire people. Human
yeah,
beings do. So if they don't meet you and get to know you at some level, they won't hire you.
yep.
So that's why networking is essential. And reaching out to people at the company gives them a chance to interact with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's why a warm recommendation from somebody at a companies are 4 times more likely to hire somebody who gets a warm recommendation from a company than somebody that doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. All right, final question. Any advice on how to proceed with an interview process that leads to a tentative offer, but in the end did not get become a signed contract because the position was put on hold? Yeah, stay in touch with them. But I think the other thing is always have multiple irons in the fire. So, those things are always bound to happen at some level. And so you just need to protect yourself by having as many opportunities out there as you possibly can.
And I'm sorry that happened to you, Sergio, but
Yeah.
I have talked to people who gave up on something because it was put on hold and then they came back 3 or 4 months later and hired them. So it's not impossible. But I think Albert's comment is right, which is you have to let go of outcomes and just keep putting yourself out there for new other opportunities.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, cool. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. And actually, Garrett, do you have any final words before I close?
Just always love working with you, Albert. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation
Callings.ai
today.
slash Albert. Come in for that. Uh,
Thank you all for joining us today, and good luck with your job hunt. We know it's hard, but hang in there and keep chopping wood, and good things will happen.
Yep. And so, yeah, thank you all so much for spending an hour of time with us today. Uh, Both Albert's List and Callings.ai have other sessions coming up. So feel free to join those. I saw that one of you mentioned whether there were follow ups or not. So feel free to join us for those. And we will see you all very shortly. In the meantime, Callings.ai slash Albert, get your 1 month free and get your job search into the way that you want it to be. Talk to you all
Sign
soon.
up for Albert's List too.
Yep.
Fantastic community for job
Thank you.
seeking.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you all soon. Bye.